Welcome back to the Make It Podcast. I'm Carolina Sotomayor, your podcast host and Reiki womb healer. And today we're talking to Angelica Neri, and she is a person that I'm really excited to speak to on a personal level, and I know you're going to gain a lot of enlightenment from. And we're going to be speaking about Kundalini today. And what is it, and where does it come from? Because we, and all aside of my Make a Baby containers, the membership, the headquarters, my private coaching, we practice Kundalini Reiki. And you also do Reiki and Ayurvedic. I don't do Ayurvedic practices, but you do Kundalini work too. And I would love to know more about you, your story, and all of the things. Let's dive deep.
Oh, I'm so excited. Yeah, I'm definitely like a fan of the ancient sciences because, all these intuitive sciences that we're talking about are super ancient. They came from thousands of years ago, probably more because they weren't passed down orally. But I got really interested in Kundalini yoga. I first started in the West here doing a lot of vinyasa yoga. And then I wanted to go deeper. In my first yoga training, I started to learn about the chakra system, and that like opened up the whole world for me. And that from then on, like I feel like the way that I saw the world was very different, and I always saw it through the chakra system. It was basically learning how to read energy, right? And know that we're holistic beings and we have not just a physical body, but a mental and emotional and spiritual, and there's specific patterns that connect them all together. I knew I wanted to study more about the chakra system. I was interested in yoga, but being like less interested in more of the physicality of it. I love alignment and all those things are really beautiful, but I really wanted to go into the energetics. So I got into Kundalini yoga. I was practicing, as we know in the West, there's Kundalini yoga is taught by Yogi Bhajan. And so that was one of my first classes. And I could see colors and visuals. And I just felt so light and clear after class from the practice that I was like, I need to do this all the time. And then it became just kind of like a part of my like hygiene. Like I needed to do it in order to feel clear, in order to process energy. And it just became such a great habit for me that I, of course, as a 1-3 in human design, I wanted to study it and I wanted to be able to share it with others right away. So I was looking into a lot of programs and becoming Kundalini certified. And a lot of them you had to do Kundalini as taught by Yogi Bhajan. And although I do like ancient sciences and I like to really revere where they come from, I also have a rebellious side to me that really wants to not necessarily like follow the rules or like follow a structure. But a lot of my journey has been needing to break away from certain systems in order to trust my own intuition and not give away my power to a guru or a system and negate what my own body is saying. So I was really particular about the training that I went into. And this is important for understanding where Kundalini came from. I ended up finding a program in Rishikesh. It was a 300-hour, and I was there for a month studying about the roots of Kundalini yoga and really where it came from. And when you study yoga, when you first study vinyasa and you go into Patanjali and the Vedic philosophy, you realize it's not about the postures. The postures were actually created just so that you could sit more comfortably in meditation. And that was the ultimate goal in yoga, is so that you can sit comfortably, so that you can gain access and channel and connect to God and have these own intuitive downloads. And so Kundalini is one of the most ancient forms of yoga because that's what it does, is it connects you directly to God. It gives you that transcendental experience that you often read about in yoga, of like that yogic bliss or that ecstasy feeling after yoga class. And I certainly would feel good after a vinyasa class, but I'm like, what's going on here? Like, why aren't I floating in a seated position? Like, why aren't I going up to the heavens after a vinyasa class? Like, I hit like a base level, but I realized with Kundalini, you were able to access higher levels of consciousness because of that, because of these techniques. And then what I learned also in India was that yoga wasn't, okay, you do vinyasa, you do hatha, you do Kundalini, you don't practice them as separate. It's just yoga as one. So what I really loved about where I studied is that we learned how to create an integrative yoga practice where you weren't just practicing even like the Kundalini practices, but you were enmeshing all of these yoga modalities together as one, as they should be practiced, so that you can have a really strong connection to source and to have elevated forms of consciousness. So that's how I got into Kundalini.
That is so powerful. So you stayed there for a month. So like, I think that when you go for a training or a certification, if you can do in person, but then like like what you did is next level. You had like an immersion experience.
Yeah, it was really wild when I was there. I mean, it was just amazing to be somewhere where it's like so sacred land. Like as soon as I touched down, I think I had a lot of past lives with these sciences. It just felt like home, and just like walking around the region, and it was at the foothill of the Himalayas and the Ganga River. It just was so, yeah, exactly. Like you felt like you could feel yourself really close to it. But then, day in and day out, you're practicing these things. I was increasing a lot of my psychic abilities, and that was so huge for me, something that I wanted for a really long time, but I didn't know how to get there. And I had no idea that yoga could actually get me to these more psychic experiences that I wanted.
In my own experience, I have taken certifications or gone through these programs that I have done in the past out of curiosity, and then in when I'm partaking in them and where I have these different healing experiences where you have to apply it to maybe another person, or I'm actually working with the modality that I'm learning, whether it's on myself or another practitioner, or when it's given to me by another practitioner. It's healed something that either I knew I wanted to heal or wasn't ready to, or it just like it was healing something that was within me. And then I jumped to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
So you already shared like it ups your psychic abilities during that experience. Did you feel like it was, do you ever, well, I guess this is a bundled question, is do you
Mm-hmm.
feel like you went there one, like unknowingly to heal certain things as well? Do you ever go through programs you're like, oh, this is professional development, but it's also for my personal healing?
I mean, I'm like a sucker for anything healing and constantly diving into it. I like probably to
Ditto.
like an addictive standpoint, like so it's like
Me too.
it's a healthy addiction. But yeah, I mean, I'm like I got lots of Scorpio placements, so I'm like I can't find a deeper depth of things. But I will say, like, I didn't have necessarily this like grand Kundalini awakening where I can pinpoint it as like one experience where it's like, "Oh, I've got it in me now and I've had this awakening." To me, it felt very subtle of like a slow opening and a
Mm.
gradually releasing a lot of these like heavier and denser energies. And it started when I just started to take classes, and when I was living in Chicago at the time. Like at that studio, I felt like I was releasing things. And that was the first time I kind of was cognizant that I was going into a spiritual awakening, because it was the beginning, like those early days that were so romantic. We were just like, oh, this is so great. I feel so positive and like love and light. And I'm just like, dancing around like a fairy. Then all of a sudden, yeah, then like the heavy stuff comes and you're like, what is this? I didn't sign up for this. And yeah, you
The
release and you
realness.
shed a lot. So yeah, in India, I just felt like I went through a whirlwind. I mean, within that month time, I felt like it was years that I was there of like,
You
like
can live a
just,
lot in a short amount of time.
yeah,
Yeah.
like releasing a lot of past lives and things that were coming up to the surface, and coming up with very old emotions, like childhood things that I like had thought I had gone over that just felt really ugly to see. And that I didn't have technology. I mean, I was on my phone never, because it was a completely different time zone, which I absolutely loved. Like I didn't have my vices to like for my like addictive behaviors. Like I had to just like sit in it. It was so uncomfortable. But on the other side of that, I could actually feel this energy. I'm very clairsentient, which means you can feel energy very clearly. And I could actually feel it was so crazy. Like literally at halfway through the training, I felt this like hovering thing over my crown of my head, to the point where like I would just like be sitting and like touching my head, being like, what is going on with me right now? And finally I got to ask my teacher, we asked personal questions at the very end. I'm like, I don't know what is going on, but like there's something above my head that like will not stop. And it just is there all the time. And it feels like a wave. And he's like, oh yeah, that's like your Kundalini energy. Like that's good. Like you awakened it. It spiraled up your spine. You were able to release a lot of the dense stuff from the lower chakras. And now it's awakened through your crown. And now it's so interesting, now that we're talking about Kundalini and Reiki, is that whenever I receive Reiki, I'm receiving Reiki energy, I feel that Kundalini energy coming out through the crown of my head right away.
Oh my gosh. I've never heard anyone describe it that way. We just went over the Claire abilities actually in the Make a Baby headquarters this past week. I was
Mm.
describing what kind of psychic are you? Because you are. Which one of these do you identify with? Let's start with which one of these do you feel right after a Reiki session? I find like after a Reiki session, you're more connected to your Claire abilities.
Definitely.
And so like what and then like, okay, what do you also experience in a Reiki session? Let's talk about this and identify. So it's so funny that you brought up clairsentient. And I was like, yes, 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 yes.
Hmm.
I have actually never felt anything above my head, but I'm going to I have felt things during a Reiki session, and I have clients tell me it feels like someone was petting me during a Reiki
Oh.
session. And I'm
Mm.
like, well, let's talk about that. We're getting with angels because we did cast a container.
Well, I will say sometimes people feel everyone has like their own Reiki energy that they give, right? And sometimes I feel like it's
Right.
like waves of energies that are going through. So I feel like that's a way of that.
I had something like, it felt like someone was petting me. I'm like, I only do online sessions. I was like, well, you were home alone, you said, and I'm in another state, another country. Can you explain what Kundalini energy is for anyone that's not aware, that's not in my world, and is listening to the pod for the first time? Can you explain what Kundalini energy is?
Kundalini is transformation, and it's supposed to activate your highest potential. It's a potential energy that's within all of us. We all have it. And the metaphor that's often given to describe Kundalini energy is this potential energy that sits at the base of our spine, our root chakra. And it's likened to that of a serpent because serpents in Vedic culture represents transformation and remember like shedding the skin, right? And coming up into your fullest potential, into this new identity that you're in. And so when you activate the Kundalini energy, you can activate this potential to awaken all these higher forms of consciousness. So when you go through the chakras, you go through different states of consciousness. A lot of people never awaken the Kundalini energy and are just living out of their root chakra. What does that mean? Their basic needs that are met are food, money, earth-based things. That's all they're focused on. So that's why we see in a lot of the world, like people who are greedy or people where it's never enough and I need more and more and more. And they're having poor boundaries with that. They're living in the root chakra. And then we have the sacral chakra when you start to awaken there. And that's where like all the creativity and the intuition starts to come through. But on the lower side of it, some people get stuck in sex addictions and thinking that and this is interesting, I think this is why Kundalini gets misconstrued as a very like sexual type of yoga. And the truth of that is sexual energy and creative energy are one and the same in Vedic culture. So it can often get like misconstrued a lot. And yeah, that's a whole other road you can go down because I've seen people obviously abuse their powers and manipulate and all those type of things. But in those type of situations, those people are only living in the sacral chakra. That's where a lot of addictions are. And then when you start to go into the higher
I
chakras,
didn't
you
know
get
that.
these higher frequencies like solar plexus. That's living in your soul's purpose. That's being able to activate your authenticity. What are your authentic gifts? What are you here to share with this world? Like, how are you becoming your own person? Then you get to the heart and it's like, how am I being of service to others? How am I giving generously, but also being able to receive as well? The throat chakra, one of my favorites and what I work on a lot with my clients, it's your visibility. It's how you're sharing your gifts, specifically what medium are you communicating them with, not just using your voice. Maybe that's drawing, painting, dancing. There's so many different ways you can express that and really make yourself feel seen. The third eye is where our intuitive gifts come from, being able to awaken to the psychic world, which is just like, for me, I don't know how I would live if I didn't understand these symbols and messages because it would feel so lonely knowing what to do. Like, and yeah, that has been huge. And then, of course, the crown chakra is a connection that you have to God, spirit, and collective consciousness as well. So, by activating this Kundalini energy, it helps to heal and release the lower vibrations of these chakras, but at the same time, activate what your highest potential is in this world.
Wow. So I didn't know, like it never occurred to me and I never heard until this moment that like I never heard of Kundalini being interpreted as sexual actually.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's really interesting you brought that up, but that makes sense. It's really powerful to know. I did not know
yeah,
that at all.
because it comes from, in the Vedas and Vedic philosophy, there's like a lot of different branches that it goes into. And Tantra, which is a science that it helps you to connect to your five senses, is often there's like a tantric sex, right? There's a whole other way of like these poses and everything like that. And Kundalini gets associated with that too, because you can have these very cosmic experiences when you are engaging in sexual activity because you are activating your sacral chakra. And it can be such a beautiful and intimate experience with that person that you're going into. But I think previously in our past, in our history, we have these gurus who are in people of power, and they use that power to manipulate people who are learning, people who are at a lower time in their life, and they take advantage of that, and they try to take away their power in that way.
It's so unfortunate because I also have heard that in Reiki, like different people, like when you go to get Reiki, unless it's like a Reiki massage, your clothes should be on. Like there's no reason for a Reiki session to be unclothed or to heal a chakra. Nobody should be violating your personal space, and Reiki should always be consensual, and that Reiki is never intercourse. Just make sure that you're being safe. Like, and it is when you are in a position of healing and you're going through a really tough time in your life, it's unfortunate that people could be predators even in healing spaces. So
yeah, that's a great reminder. I didn't hear that about Reiki.
Be careful. Yeah. One of my certification teachers, she had a partner for a very long time, and this partner was sleeping with certification students as part of like, I can take you to the next level beyond the certification of enlightenment. I just need to put it in you, quite literally. And he did that while he was in a relationship with her for decades, and it's so disgusting and awful to think about. I never met that man, but when she was teaching the class, it was on the cusp of the healing of ending that relationship. And you could tell still how very much angry, and rightfully so.
Right.
Because she's like, there's so much healing I have to do to this community. So if you want to get Reiki, always keep your clothes on. And if someone tells you to take off your clothes, go somewhere else. That's not an appropriate person to work with. Always feel free to ask lots of questions to anyone that you do energy work with. They should have the heart of a teacher. Okay, so with Kundalini energy, tell me one of your favorite success stories or breakthrough with a client that with Kundalini energy you love to tell.
So I do Kundalini practices every month with a woman in my membership, and it's kind of like just like hygiene, right? Of energetics, of clearing and being able to release. And I mean, I feel like all the I can't say like one specifically stands out, but
That's okay.
Maybe something will come up when I start to talk about it more. But basically what I use them is to clear our energy so that we become channels for divine healing energy and to receive intuitive messages. I'm constantly teaching my students that they have access to this consciousness, and I want them to have their own intimate connection with the divine so that they are resourced and they can use that connection to navigate their life. So with my experiences with using that, I will often like go into do like little mini readings with them, like when they're in that state of clarity of basically just seeing, okay, like what are their guides saying, and being able to check in and being able to kind of like affirm also like the visions and the things that they're getting. It's just so wild because all my whole business is online, right? And so I have people from Australia and the East Coast and UK and all over the world. And when I share what I was intuiting and the things and the directions that they're going into, it's literally always like dead on, like, oh yeah, of course, like I just started working with this new person today and this came in through, or oh my gosh, yes, I've been getting more into creating and painting again, and like all these things start coming into play, and it's just so wild. And to me, this is like the only way to live life, is to be able to read these messages, but it like gives me so much hope of noticing these synchronicities and how deeply connected we really are. It just makes me believe in the magic of the world again. And it makes me feel like so excited to live in this world that could feel really heavy at times. It could feel really difficult. And it's so empowering to them too, to know that like, yes, like you are following your intuition in those ways. You can trust the messages that you are receiving. Yeah. You can follow me on Instagram, Angelica_feminine_healer. I share a lot of content there and basically just teaching everyone like what's the energy going on right now, and how you can individualize it for your unique energy type. And to work with me, I mainly have my membership right now, and we do full moon and new moon ceremonies, doing Reiki and Kundalini to clear that energy. You receive personalized intuitive messages a few times a month from me as well. And yeah, there's so many good things in there too. Sometimes we'll go through programs. So this month we did an Ayurvedic cleanse, which we do seasonally, that you can join in on, and that helps to like obviously clear physical things that you're holding on to. But I love doing cleanses for like the spiritual aspect of it, of just clearing the slate and starting fresh. And we have moon books in there, so you get to see like what the astrological transits are going on right now, and you can kind of track them and keep a calendar. And it's just like a great group of women who are super intuitive, supporting each other. A lot of them have their own healing businesses. That's mainly the women that I work with, because they want to like take their healing abilities to the next level. And it's just nice to have that support, because I know you can feel like you're on an island, like doing your own thing over here. And
maybe I'll join.
Oh, I would love to have you.
I always
Yeah, I always find that when people say that with Ayurveda, when they're like, "Oh, that name is interesting," and like I keep hear it popping up, that's usually how it comes in, and how I've seen it. That's how for me, like it just like kept. And there's like an allure to it. There's like, what's about that? It's a beautiful science. It's a very feminine science. It goes hand in hand, I think, with Kundalini and Reiki in that stance, because it empowers you to know what you've already known to be true, but it like gives you a good roadmap of understanding your intuition.
And I love that you mentioned human design earlier. What energy type are you?
I'm a projector. How about you?
Shut up. I am too. That doesn't surprise me.
What's your profile?
I'm a 3-5.
Ooh, we got the 3 line.
Yeah. So I'm teaching on Friday how to use human design for your fertility.
Oh.
And I do find that there's a connection between the arrow, like, so at the top of the chart, there's an arrow, the bottom right arrow that points left or right, that tells you what kind of manifestor you are. Not manifestor energy type, but like, how do you manifest things in your life? Left meaning more detailed, and right being less. And I am a less detailed manifestor. And what I have found is that really giving that like chart validation to clients really allows them to see, I'm like, okay, these are things that are fixed and unfixed. And these are the things that, that are going to be your super strength. And then, going into gates and channels, it allows them to feel more, if they're new to their spiritual awakening or Kundalini awakening, wherever they are at, it gives them this extra oomph, this extra confidence, and more groundedness and connecting to themselves. Like, it's a very validating experience.
Yeah.
It allows them to also think about their fertility of like, how can I approach this that's more authentic to me? And so when they look at, it's not necessarily, yes, we are manifesting a baby, we are manifesting our fertility, but it's also their journey of becoming the version of ourselves that is the mom that we want to be, the version of our most joyful. I like to use this word unburdened. It describes like a lot of what happens between the fertility and the pregnancy part. Is you really are, I want you to be unburdened, because a lot of women I work with, they're carrying the emotional labor and worry for so many people that is not necessary. So I really want them to be their most unburdened self. You don't have to be burdened anymore. I want you to be your most joyful self, your most, because I'm not the type of like, kind of despise the phrase love and light, because I just feel like it's gotten such a bad rap. It's just love and light. No, like, I'm in the grit of this. Let's get into the deep toe-to-toe work of like, where are you stressed out in your life? And where do you want to go? What kind of feelings do you want to have? And some people that might be, I have a lot of type A women, like, okay, let's lean into that, but in a really like, let's release the shame and guilt from that. So this is your natural tendency. Let's lean into that. That means you have details. Let's use that to our advantage. Let's leverage that. There's no shame in being type A. But then I'm more a type B. I lost my wallet for a whole month and I was still using Apple Pay. I'm like, let's feel our way to our baby. And that way is okay too. And I think that using just that one piece of a human design chart has helped so many women get closer and become and embody that different version of them that they're like, I don't know if I would ever get there.
Yeah.
And I really love human design. I pulled my son's human design chart. He's a 3/6 projector. I don't know why my
Oh,
husband
wow.
is a
Household of projectors.
my husband's a Manny Gen.
Oh,
That's what I was trying to say, Manny Gen. And my husband's a Manny Gen. I forget his profile. But my son, because I was just reviewing his chart. I read him all my texts that I'm reading, and then he'll fall asleep. So where I was reading him like his human design profile for him to fall asleep. And
oh,
I was like, wait a minute. This explains so much. I forgot. Like, so it said like he's going to be a CEO. He goes, "What's a CEO again?" It was like, it's the boss of the boss of the boss. Like he's the guy in charge. And then it said something that stuck out to me that was really like he will have these huge breakthrough moments at 18, 30, and 50. And I
huh.
was like, in that there's just a lot of trial and tribulation, a lot of play, and that's how he'll learn.
Mm,
Um and I was like, okay, how I interpret this as your mom is I'm gonna have to watch you crash and burn a lot, and you're
yeah,
gonna learn by doing, and I'm gonna have to I need thicker skin.
for sure. Oh my God, that's what I definitely worry about that with having a kid and being like, "Oh God, I gotta watch you make these mistakes. It's so painful." But they
My gosh. I I'm super grateful for everything I know, but sometimes I feel like I know too much now that I've
totally.
worked with so many moms so many existing moms. So just a little sidebar. My kiddo got punched in the stomach multiple times and
Oh,
slapped across the face last week.
oh,
And that was last Wednesday. So then he had another altercation, same kid 2 weeks prior, where he got kicked and punched in the stomach. And I was like, "Oh, man, this is so painful."
yeah.
But my son still wants to be friends with this kid. So we
Oh,
worked with the school, we worked with the principal, and I'm doing everything I can. And I noticed through all of this, I'm like so emotionally regulated. Like I can express my emotions. I'm super mad, but when I went to the school, when I spoke to the principal versus like when my kid got a concussion when he was 2 at the Montessori school, I wasn't allowed to go pick him up for 2 weeks at his last 2 weeks because I screamed at the lady. And, 'cause I lost my shit. Like,
I
my
would believe it.
kid, how
Yeah,
can you not tell me how he has blood from his head?
yeah,
Like, lost my mind. So this time it's like, "Carolina, we've learned not to burn bridges.
yeah.
You're 41 now. He is almost 8. That was when he was 2. We're not the same people." Coaching myself in the head as I
Yeah.
do a year Yui as he's telling me the whole story. "We're going back to the school. It's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
I'm gonna show We're gonna tell the principal, this is called advocating for yourself and you need practice. Let's just tell him what happened. You're not in trouble. I'm not in trouble. We're okay."
When you coddle them like that and you make it seem like they're not capable of being able to overcome this challenge and that you have to do it
No.
for them.
Yeah.
And it's like the opposite. It's like, no, you're empowering them. Like, I think you're strong. Like, you could do this. Like, and that is that grit, and that's going to get them to the next level.
I feel like also is this like he's learned a lot of things without me knowing. Like, of course, they always say they're always watching and they'll pick up, but like we're very polite people within our own house. We say please and thank you. So he always has had manners without me trying. But what I realized when he was speaking to the principal in that moment, he was getting practice advocating for himself to a person of authority, and he
Mm,
wasn't scared. 2, he saw a safe parent advocating and saying, reinforcing, this is what you need to speak up for yourself, and you have support doing so. And it is okay to speak to authority figures and say, hey, this happened to me. Versus when I was a kid,
right.
scared shitless of everyone,
Totally.
scared to speak up. But also what I noticed, I took away from like listening to him, processing, we took a whole weekend to talk about it, is one is my son is probably the nicest human that I think I've ever counted. He has such a loving heart. Also, I identified something within him that I used to have, which was he has a savior complex. He thinks he needs to save people.
Mm,
And I also don't feel the need to fix him either. We can talk about things because that wasn't me a couple years ago, because he has his own journey and he has his own soul revolution. It's funny I said revolution. he would start a revolution. Whole soul evolution is what I meant to say. That I don't know all the nooks and crannies. I can just be like, hey, we don't need to save people. People are allowed to be themselves, and you can go play with other kids. You don't always have to play with the kids that have no friends, but it's really nice and thoughtful that you're very kind to them. But if people are hitting you, you don't deserve to be hit. You need to go play with other friends that appreciate you.
Right. Wow.
It's a lot of deep breaths out
Yeah.
of one moment. But I think that if I had not found and switched to Kundalini Reiki, I think that was when I switched and practicing it consistently. That was truly the emotional regulation secret key that I was missing versus like other forms of Reiki that I was practicing. Because for me, Kundalini Reiki is so simple. And the way it's taught is that you don't have to have hand positions, or the way I was taught. And you don't have to use symbols. And it's it's like the easiest form of Reiki. It's stripped down of all of the symbols. I do use traditional Usui symbols with it, and that feels aligned for me. But I no longer practice holy fire at all. Um, I do use crystals in my work. I'll do crystal grids and I'll Reiki the crystal grid, but I don't do any holy fire anymore. But that's what I practiced for years. But for me, I just noticed like in my motherhood journey, like when we hit school age, we hit kindergarten, my emotional regulation, I needed more. We faced different challenges in kindergarten versus like preschool. There was a big shifts in our lives, a lot of more unknowns. I don't know about his day versus like the daycare we had. He had like 7 students. It was attached to my husband's job. I knew everything about his day, what he ate. When he goes to elementary, it's not. And having Kundalini really just 100% switch that emotional regulation so I can connect to Mother Earth more deeply for me. That's like what I visualize when I think and I give myself Reiki in the morning and I'd start my morning routine, is I imagine like my root opens up and my trunk goes down into Mother Earth, and that is what I receive from above and down. Like I just feel so much more regulated and grounded, for lack of a better word, with the practice of Kundalini versus not. But thanks for allowing me to share a little bit.
I love it.
So can you reshare your Instagram again?
Yeah. I love hearing all of that. My Instagram is Angelica_feminine_healer. So I post about everything. And you can link onto my website or just send me a DM. I'm always up in my DMs and I love talking to everyone. So just hit me up. And thank you so much for this space. And I'm super excited to be connected with you.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing all of your knowledge. You are just a beacon of light. Thank you so much for being here. And for 2025, I am accepting new private one-on-one clients, and we are now enrolling for January's Make a Baby Headquarters, our signature group program. If you're interested, please go ahead. Don't be hesitant to book a free VIP fertility call, and we will see what is a good match for you. And after all, we're here to make some babies. Until next time, my friends.